Okay, Terry, I think we're good to go.
Here we go.
Oh, there's Travis. Okay.
Can y'all hear me?
Perfect.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Finally got let in. Sorry.
Can you turn your camera on? You got that going?
Maybe. I guess if y'all want to see me.
Okay,
All
there
right.
we go.
Good morning, everybody. There we go. Okay. All right. Are we ready to go? Good morning, everybody. I'm going to call this meeting to order and establish that we have a quorum present. How many planning commissioners are with us today? Do we have all
6.
7?
6.
Who are we missing?
Ryan Smith.
Ryan Smith. Okay. First order of business is the consent agenda. The commission may request for a consent agenda item to be moved to the regular agenda for presentation and public comment. Otherwise, the consent agenda will be considered in one vote. The only thing on the consent agenda are the minutes from last month's meeting. Do I have a motion?
Motion to accept, please.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept. All in favor, say aye by show of hands, please. And opposed?
6-0.
6-0. All right. Regular.
Travis, I need to recuse myself from this subdivision plan.
Okay. So regular agenda, subdivision plats, the planning commission has final authority for approval. Appeals may be directed to the city council. Item A, preliminary plat, San Angelo Tractor Supply subdivision, a request for approval of a preliminary plat of lot 1 and lot 2, San Angelo Tractor Supply subdivision, being 12 acres located southeast of the intersection of North Bryant Boulevard and West 33rd Street. And Terry Jackson has recused herself from this case.
And Travis, if you can go ahead and read the item B as well, they're going to be presented together.
Okay. B is San Angelo Tractor Supply subdivision, a request for approval of a final plat of lot 1, San Angelo Tractor Supply subdivision being 5.231 acres, located at 3150 North Bryant Boulevard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Shelley Pasco, planner. And before I present, the applicant would like to speak on this case.
Good morning. My name is Juan Vasquez with Vasquez Engineering, 1919 South Charlotte Road, Garland, Texas, 75042. I'm here representing the developer for Tractor Supply Company. We would like to request a 30-day waiver on items A and B to be submitted for the next hearing date in December. We are making the Tractor Supply lot a little smaller due to a request from the property seller to us to try and purchase a little bit less land from his property. Thank you.
Okay, so to clarify, you want us to table these two cases, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct, sir.
Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion?
So moved.
In a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to table the preliminary plat and final plat for the Tractor Supply subdivision. All in favor, say aye with show of hands. And then opposed?
So 5-0. And then just Juan and Bo, just where you're going to go back into the waiting room, and then when the conditional use comes up, we'll bring you back in. So be aware that we will bring you back in at that time.
Okay, next item, first replat of Block 13, Carruthers Addition. Request for approval of a first replat of Block 13, Carruthers Addition, being 4.084 acres, located at the northeast corner of South Bell Street and Roosevelt Street, and 3 variances from Chapter 103A2 of the Land Development Subdivision Ordinance to maintain paving width of 36 feet without curb and gutter in lieu of the required 64 feet with curb and gutter for Roosevelt Street and Urban Arterial Street, to maintain a paving width of 47.5 feet with curb and gutter in lieu of the required 64 feet with curb and gutter for South Bell Street and Urban Arterial Street, and to allow Bryan Street and Urban Local Street 50 feet wide to maintain an all-weather surface without curb and gutter in lieu of the required paved surface with curb and gutter.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jeff Fisher, Principal Planner. I'm just making sure, can everybody see my screen okay and the slides changing?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Okay. So this is the first replat of Block 13, Carruthers Addition. It's northeast of South Bell Street and Roosevelt Street in San Angelo. The zoning is CGCH for most of the property. This is the Talk of Texas pickle factory in this location. And in 2017, they abandoned this 70-foot strip of South Murray Street between Bryan and Roosevelt Street. One of the conditions of the approval was that they replatted this into one large lot. The purpose was just to have more space for them to put in, my understanding, more parking and just have more area available. So they're back here to do this replat. As part of this replat, they've requested the 3 variances Chair Stribling had mentioned. Once you do the replat, it triggers street improvements and coming up to today's standards. The future land use is commercial, except for that abandoned area. Half of that is RS1 because the area to the east is RS1. It's in District 3, Harry Thomas in the Fort Concho East neighborhood. So the original Carruthers goes way, way back, and they're going to replat this into one large block or tract A1. It's 4.084 acres. The variances are to maintain Roosevelt Street at 36 feet wide with no curb and gutter. Bryan Street has 50 feet of right-of-way. It's a local. It only needs 40, but it's unpaved. So this is to allow an all-weather surface. And then South Bell Street to allow it at 47.5. 10 notifications were mailed out because that little strip of the abandonment area was RS1. It triggered notification. We did get 1 letter in favor from a resident over here and none opposed. This is looking at some of the pictures. You can see Roosevelt Street is paved but deficient, doesn't have the curb and gutter. South Bell Street is only 47.5 feet wide, but it's part of a city CIP project. So the city's going in, putting in sidewalks and also paving and redoing that street already. So that would maintain the current width there. And staff will be in support of that for those reasons in a minute. This was the former South Murray Street area that was abandoned as part of this condition to replat. And this is Bryan Street. It's got lots of right-of-way. It just hasn't been paved. Staff supports the replat request that it conforms with the comprehensive plan and with the intent of purpose statements. It's a commercial designation for the most of it. Some of it's industrial. That fits with the commercial nature of the property. The reduced paving width on Roosevelt Street, no paving at all on Bryant would not meet the intent of purpose statements as it is. If it complies with our standards and they do the improvements, then it would. The no curb and gutter on Bryant and on Roosevelt is also a problem, and we've talked about this in previous subdivision cases. You get edge deterioration, you get stormwater runoff, and that's a concern for engineering and for the city. So we're breaking it down into the 3 different streets and our rationale to support the variances or not support the variances. So for South Bell, we are in support of the variance to keep 47.5 feet. It's part of the CIP project. City's already paying for the improvements. The developer had given us an easement for a sidewalk, so there will be full sidewalks along there as well. If the developer had to pave that, obviously they'd have to rip up what the city's already done. It doesn't make sense. So we're in support of that variance. Next, on Roosevelt Street, this is part of a 2-mile stretch of a future arterial road. The area where the plat is already an arterial, and then just east of that plat, going all the way through Quicksand up to Loop 306 is a future arterial. So we want the full pavement there. So on their incremental half, that would be 14 additional feet of pavement, and engineering will is available as well for any further questions on that. But the logic is if we don't get the close that gap right now, it's going to become a problem. And then as all the other development starts to happen going this way, if it stays at 36 feet, the city is going to have to pick up the bill for that. And that's a concern. They have ample right of way to be able to do it. And so that would be that variance there. We don't believe there's a hardship. Is there an inconvenience? Sure. Like every subdivision, they will have to obviously spend the money on the paving. But we believe that's justified in this particular case, the fact that it's an arterial. And then again, the reason for if without the curbs there right now will be a problem for runoff. So looking at Bryan Street, if we go west of South Bell, Bryan is already 40 feet wide with curb and gutter. So this area, I understand that as of right now, it stops at the end of the property, but it still is a street. So we want at least the minimum standard, and that would be 26 feet for emergency access paved. We don't believe there's a hardship. It's got 100 feet of right of way, and having an all-weather surface obviously becomes a problem. If we look at the aerial, which I can go back to, you can see that if the area is developed to the east, it's possible, we don't know for sure, but Bryan Street could end up being extended or part of a future street. So just not having that, leaving an all-weather surface is not sufficient. So staff recommends approval of a first replat of Block 13 Carruthers, approval of a variance to maintain the 47.5 feet with curb and gutter on South Bell Street, part of that CIP project, but denial of the variance to maintain 36 feet without curb and gutter for Roosevelt, and denial of a variance to allow Bryan Street and Urban Local Street at 50 feet wide to maintain an all-weather surface without curb and gutter, subject to the 7 conditions. I'll go over these very quick. Provide a tax certificate, illustrate the required 25-foot building lines, and that's just a standard, just to show there's 3 sides, so there's 3 front yard setbacks, so just show the 25 feet. Complete all conditions of the right-of-way abandonment, and the right-of-way abandonment is basically pay the assessment formula and then use 20 feet of that abandoned area of South Marie as a fire access. And I think the fire department's here to comment on that. Provide the location of any fire hydrants, prepare and submit plans for improvements of Bryan Street, or they get the variance. Prepare and submit plans for improvements of Roosevelt or get the variance, and prepare and submit plans for South Bell Street or get the variance. So that concludes staff's presentation. I'll stop sharing my screen. Any questions or comments?
Anyone have questions for Jeff? All right, let's open it up for public comment, please.
Good morning, Russell with SKG Engineering. I guess we'd like to start out and say and reiterate kind of what Jeff is talked about, is where the necessity of this replat is because it was a condition of the street abandonment. Talca, Texas has been operating there for years, decades for that matter, in that neighborhood. And even if you go back and Jeff talked about that original plat is maybe over 100 years old. And so that area has kind of been functioning and operating in its current state for pretty much forever. And so just to put it straight up and bluntly, if Talca, Texas has to make these improvements, and they are a financial hardship on Talca, Texas, they won't go forward with the abandonment and it'll just stick with the status quo. So I don't know where the balance is between status quo and the street staying there and having to continue to be maintained by the city. But really, this is kind of a unique location. Roosevelt, Mr. Fisher said that it is an arterial. It's designated as an arterial, but it is not built to an arterial and does not function as an arterial. So Roosevelt, to call it an arterial at this point, It's not existing as an arterial. Maybe on the map it is, but in functionality, because it goes a very short distance and ends. So if in the future Roosevelt ever extends through the Windstone Golf Course and out to Loop 306, sure, absolutely, it can pick up and become a major street. But one has to ask himself, is that fair to talk of Texas to have to improve a street to arterial? And even the land development ordinance kind of puts the middle 15 foot of arterials on the city's expense to pay for. So really, we believe Roosevelt functions properly for the neighborhood today, and what Talk of Texas is doing as part of this is it shouldn't be, it's a hardship on them to have to improve Roosevelt. And so we would ask your support in granting that variance because it is a real hardship and just not economically feasible for them to do. And then Bryan Street, it's a very short segmented street, kind of goes, I'm sorry, the street to the north there, Jeff. Let me get back to the map. Yeah, Bryan Street to the north, it goes over to Marie Street. Now, with our portion of Marie Street being abandoned, it really leaves for a very minimally utilized area and could be, I believe, maybe a good candidate for abandonment in the future, but that's a whole different conversation. So the Bryan Street really functions kind of as a drive, maybe Talk of Texas has some loading docks on their north, on the north side that kind of contributes over to Bryan. So, there again, drainage has been functioning this way ever since this has been developed. Bryan Street really goes, it's a very short segment, so we'd ask kind of you to grant that variance on Bryan to allow it just to kind of remain in its current condition as well. So, this is a tough one. Talk of Texas would like to have the Marie Street and be able to utilize that, but the requirements for paving and improving these streets just puts the hardship on them that really makes it unviable for them to do. So they'll just kind of leave it status quo. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Is Marie Street the eastern boundary of Talk of Texas?
Yes, sir.
And they're looking at acquiring that paving area and adding it into their lot?
Yes, sir. Currently, it pretty much just functions to their benefit. A little bit of traffic, local traffic, maybe from Roosevelt up to Bryan or Culbertson, but it really, thanks City for kind of paving Marie Street and taking care of that, maintaining it for Talk of Texas all these years. They appreciate that. And like I said, if they don't get it abandoned, they just like to be able to, maybe park a semi or a truck over there and kind of utilize it more so than I guess what they currently do.
Okay. Anyone else have questions for Russell? Thank you, Mr. Gully. Anyone else wish to speak on this case? If you would, please come forward.
Yeah, this is Lance Overstreet with engineering. Just so the planning commission members are aware, we actually had a change order on the Bell Street project where we actually are currently going to rebuild the intersection there at Roosevelt, and it will be widened out to the arterial width at the intersection up until the radius returns. That is primarily being done because of the more recent discussions that have been had with quicksand and the potential for that arterial to be built out over the next couple of years. And so we have actually expended some funds at that intersection and are going to be reconfiguring it, as well as we also modified that Bell Street project to add a water main extension going down to Roosevelt. And so that tap has also been made in preparation for what we feel will be happening in the near future on Roosevelt. And so I just wanted to let planning commissioners be aware of those two things that the city has already done to prepare for that, that arterial being built out.
I have
Okay.
a question for Lance. Lance, so the replatted area would be about 500 feet along Roosevelt Street. Do you know approximately what portion would be widened along Roosevelt as part of your project and what would be left out of that? I'm estimating about 500 feet when you include the abandoned area.
I believe at this point, we are just widening out the intersection to the radius return. So it's only going to go about 20 or 30 feet down Roosevelt at this point, and it will be concreted to match the rest of Bell Street in that area. And so the curb and everything is being widened out in that intersection to be prepared for an arterial.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak on this case? We're still in public comment.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, just so everyone is aware, again, we have 3 variances. So it's 3 streets: Bell Street, Bryan, and Roosevelt. So here in a minute, when we get to someone ready to make a motion, what we might have Jeff do is bring back up the staff recommendation. Whether you go with it or you vary it a little bit, it will help us make our motion clear in that point.
Okay.
And one thing that just kind of looking for options, you know, we would appreciate the variance on all 3 of them. You know, we hopefully can get at least one on Bell Street for sure, you know. And I've had a little conversation with staff, you know, if the city can't even build a street as part of a huge capital campaign, you know, project to the specified class of, you know, the classification that they're showing, maybe we need to look at reclassifying Bell Street for what it's truly been built to. And then, you know, kind of how does that process, how do people process that thought? But if we don't get the full variances, and I believe it's an option automatically, but the report didn't say anything about the opportunities for developers agreement between Talk of Texas and the city on, you know, maybe if in the future, if Roosevelt ever continues out in the next 5 years or some time designated time period, maybe Talk of Texas could contribute some financially to it. You know, to me, it just doesn't, it makes little sense.
It's live.
Spend the money
Sherry, yeah.
for
No, go
Talk
ahead.
of
I'm sorry.
Texas to do part of their
Couple
house
hours at
now
least.
and then.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. I know I didn't tell you.
Jeff, I'm sorry, guys. We can't.
Yeah, Jeff,
can't
you're
hear
not
Russell.
muted, so.
My
Okay.
apology.
Russell, please go ahead. I'm sorry.
So, you know, we would have kind of half of Roosevelt Street built, and then in the future, the other half comes in, and, you know, economies of scale certainly would, you know, if the Roosevelt construction could all be done at once, when Roosevelt continues on through the future, that makes economic sense. You know, good Talk of Texas have a developers agreement with the city that they help contribute to that maybe at some point in the future. You know, let's discuss that if you guys aren't willing to give them the full variance on both of those as we're asking for now.
Russell, I want to talk about Bryan for a second. It doesn't have asphalt on it, but it's clearly been maintained over the years and is a pretty wide swath of land, a pretty wide road coming off of Bell Street. What is the city asking Talk of Texas to do? Is it pay the incremental half of their frontage? And if that's done, are they going to come in and pave this road tomorrow? Or, you know, how does that work?
Well, they would have to do, yes, pave their half to a minimum of 26 foot wide down Bryan Street.
So we got to have a fire lane.
Yes.
Okay.
You know, I guess back when this was platted in the early 1900s, the idea for this area was super wide right of way. So really, you know, Talk of Texas could and maybe should ask to abandon their 25 foot of this, because Bryan's just a local street and only needs 50 foot right of way. You know, maybe going forward, Talk of Texas could request abandoning 25 foot of that, and the neighbor to the north could abandon 25 feet, or, you know, but yes, they would have to pave and improve a 26 foot wide strip
Okay.
of Bryan Street on their side.
Okay. Thank you, Russell. Staff, you guys made mention of maybe the fire marshal speaking on this. I'm assuming it's about Bryan, or it may not be. Is there anyone else that needs to speak on this case, or can I close public comment?
I think you can close public comment if Russell's clear on that. I think the abandonment condition of the 20 feet fire lane, my understanding is the South Marie side is already paved. So that 20
Correct.
feet, they may just need to stripe it, like just show a fire lane there, but that the pavement has already been taken care of if Mr. Coleman's available. But I think that's been addressed.
Yeah, I'm assuming Marie is wide enough to meet whatever fire lane requirements. Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
That
my
the fire marshal was worried about Marie?
correct. There was a condition back in the 2017 abandonment. And so I think it was just, they had to have 20 feet clear for a fire lane. So I think what they're going to have to do is just paint it. They just need to delineate a fire lane, but that the pavement
Travis,
is already there.
Travis, this is Ross. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Good morning, Ross.
Good morning. Yeah, I think that everything's there in place. So I just think it's a matter of striping. I don't think it's anything else.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr.
Yes.
Coleman.
Yes, sir.
All right, I'm going to close public comment. I do have some more questions for the staff. I'm still unclear how we got where we are. We had there's been reference to a case in 2017 for an abandonment of Marie Street. Is that correct? And they never paid the assessment, and so they've come back now and it's triggered a lot more review, or were these issues with Bryan and Roosevelt? It seems like we've had this discussion before.
So just a quick background, and Hillary, add anything you want as well. The original Carruthers edition was platted in like 1909. It was replatted in like 1930. So that lot configuration, it has existed ever since 1930. When they wanted to acquire more land and abandon the 70 feet of South Marie to the east of the Talk of Texas facility, that triggered the current subdivision standards, which is basically that they have to replat, was one of the conditions, so that they didn't leave basically a remnant. And so they, as part of the replatting, that triggered all the street improvements. So if they had left it alone and not abandoned it, they wouldn't have been here today.
Okay. Did they go through this same process in 2017?
No.
In 2017, they requested the abandonment for the 70-foot strip. And then the condition of that abandonment is that they had to replat. And there was no time condition on that. So they just decided they were going to move forward now in 2020.
And they understood these. We talked about this with them when they came in for Marie Street abandonment. So even though we talked about it at council, they knew that we would have a replat, because any abandonment we do, we absorb, those abandonments into the adjacent property. We also had explained to them, when they do go to replat, there will be street improvements or they will seek variances. So they're seeking the variances. So
Okay.
that's kind of where we are. We knew this was coming, so here it is. Now we just have to make these decisions. Again, staff is supporting the variance for South Bell Street, because it's currently under construction for the capital improvement project. So that one staff is supportive of. The other ones, let's talk about Bryan first. Bryan is completely unpaved. I don't know of any street in this city where staff would recommend leaving an unpaved street unpaved. I mean, that's just staff's recommendation is to pave a minimum 26 foot wide. I think engineering is very supportive of that. That's just, again, we're in the city of San Angelo, streets and roads are paved. So that's one of the ones that you guys are going to have to really think about and, decide which way you want to go on. On Roosevelt, again, we have seen interest in the development west or east of this property. So that really helps us establish that this road needs to be widened along this piece. I think Lance could probably speak to the developers agreement if that's an option, but is it coming? We don't have any securities that there's development that's coming east of here, but we hate to miss this opportunity. This is the time where they're replatting. And again, this property hasn't been replatted in 100 years, is I think relatively what Russell said. So this is our opportunity. If we believe Roosevelt is the arterial that eventually one day will connect to Loop 306, this is the opportunity to widen this section without it falling, the burden of the widening falling on the taxpayers. So it's just your decision as to which way we go on these three variances. So I hope that.
Okay.
Just
I
one
understand.
quick thing to add. There was a recent abandonment on south of Roosevelt for the South Marie portion so that's about kitty corner to this property. They're going to have to replat as well as part of their abandonment. And they're going to also have to dedicate their 14 feet of incremental half. So I wish there was a solution here to try to resolve this. I think our concern was that if we miss the opportunity, as Hillary was saying, to get this now, it could create a chain reaction, and then nobody does their incremental halves, and then we're left with this big gap in the street.
Okay. All right, so public comment has been closed, and it's now open for a discussion among us or a motion. My personal opinion, these are the toughest cases I think that we review and discuss, because it's an infill site. We've got existing roads that the city's plans have changed, and now we need to widen them to accommodate future development. I don't know if it's fair to put all of the burden on Talk of Texas for the Roosevelt requirement, the widening of Roosevelt. They've already got the right of way has been granted, correct? We're just talking about the cost of basically who's paying for the paving, right, Jeff?
That's right.
Okay. Brian, I see a little bit different. It's a road that clearly Talk of Texas is using for truck traffic access. It's a road that connects to Bell Street, which is a major arterial road. Personally, I think Bryan should be paved. I don't know about Roosevelt widening, and it sounds like everyone's in agreement that we're going to grant a variance on Bell Street based on the work that's been done over there. So those are my thoughts. If anyone else would share their thoughts or make a motion, I'd be grateful.
I agree with you, Travis. I don't think it's fair to put all the burden on widening Roosevelt to Talk of Texas, especially if we've got a potential 3 to 5 year plan on future development going north. I think that's something that can be readdressed in the future. And I do agree with you that I think that whichever the street is, Brian, that's actually hitting Bell, I would agree with you that probably does need to get paved, just with it being inside the city limits.
Yeah.
I think that's fair, but I don't think it's fair for Talk of Texas to have to do both of those. That's a huge financial burden on a business that is, employing members of the community. So we don't want to lose a business just because they can go, out to Bront, Texas and operate cheaper out there, so
Yeah.
I agree with you there.
Good point. Very good point. Okay. Anyone else have thoughts or wish to make a motion?
So was it my understanding also that if these three the three are not approved, then Talk of Texas can go back, not replat, not do their,
I think the city
Marie
can
Street?
clarify this, but my understanding, Terry, is that they're being required to do this because they want Roosevelt, the Roosevelt Street frontage on the
Right.
east side of their property.
Right.
So yes, if they chose not to purchase that road, that right of way, then we wouldn't have any of this discussion.
Okay. And then on the future development that you're discussing in the next 3 to whoever knows how long, those individual people that are going to be developing that will be responsible for the street themselves. Is that correct?
On the property in which they're developing. So if there is development east, they will be responsible for the road east of here. But this is the development of this property. So again, you
Right.
do it as you develop. So
Right, but this has been discussed as in the future also. The future needs and what's going on has been part of this discussion.
yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Going back to what Russell said, as far as down the road, if Roosevelt does expand and we do go north, maybe that is something that we can discuss with Talk of Texas, that down the road, if this happens, then, we've got a conditional requirement. But right now, for what it is, I don't think it's necessary.
I don't
don't
think you
either.
can, I
And
don't
I
think
think
you
the
can
only-
ask
yeah.
for more after this is closed and settled. You cannot go back and say, okay, you need to go in and add 14 feet and we're going to make the rest of the road wider. You can't do that.
Right. Terry's right. We could have a developer's agreement where we basically say you have a financial obligation for the widening of this road that abuts your property, but you don't have to do it today. You have to do it at some point down the road. But I personally, I don't even think that that's reasonable given how long that property's been there and what they're trying to do. There's some major work that's going to have to be done to extend Roosevelt east of Bell Street, not just along this property. So, okay.
Would y'all like for Jeff to bring up the recommendation slide just to help formulate the motion?
Sure. So we have Bell Street, Roosevelt Street, and Bryan Street, where the applicants requested variances for all three.
Sure.
That would probably need to be addressed in our motion. So
Yeah. So on
anyone
the screen,
interested in tackling this?
Yeah. So on the screen there, you'll see we need to approve the plat and then we need to decide on 3 different variances. So the motion would be to address each of those 4 things.
Anyone got a motion they'd like to make?
Then Travis, what you might do is take each variance and take a motion on that. And that may help us get going. So if we want to talk about Bell Street first, Brandon, I'm assuming that's okay if we go each one. So we'll do variance by variance and then go back in the plat, do the plat.
Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion on the variance for Bell Street?
Make a motion to approve the variance on Bell Street.
Second.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the variance requested for Bell Street. All in favor, say aye by show of hands. And opposed?
Okay, that was 6-0.
Okay, so the next one is Roosevelt Street. Does anyone wish to make a motion on Roosevelt?
I make a motion to accept the variance on Roosevelt.
Okay,
Second.
okay. We have a motion and a second to approve the variance, to grant the variance for Roosevelt Street. All in favor, say aye by show of hands. And opposed?
So that was 6-0 as well.
Okay, last one's Brian.
I'm going to make a motion to approve the variance on Bryan Street.
Okay,
I'll second that.
so we have a motion and a second to grant the variance on Bryan Street, which would leave it as is. All in favor of that variance, please say aye by show of hands. And then opposed.
So that one was 3-3. So that motion, Jeff, you have to have a majority. You're muted.
Yeah, it takes a majority of the commissioners to approve it, and so it failed for lack of approval.
Okay.
I think to be clean, it might be best for someone, well, I'll defer to Brandon here, because if
Can we table
someone makes
this?
the motion to deny, it would still should be 3-3, so.
Well, and Travis, just so that you're aware, even if the motion has failed and it's denied, the variance is denied, the applicant has the choice to appeal that to city council. So I don't know that you'll have to keep going back and forth with it. That's up to Russell.
Okay.
They have the chance to appeal if they so choose.
Okay,
So if that failed, Brandon, do you need them to go and do the opposite, or are you good with where it stands?
Yeah, if it failed, I mean, the variance just isn't approved, and we need to decide on replat.
Okay, so all we need now, guys, is the replat. So again, staff was recommending approval on that. So if we can get a variance for if we can get a motion for the plat.
so you want a motion for the plat without consideration of the variances?
No.
I would word it as a motion to approve the plat with the variances as you just voted on.
Okay,
Okay.
I'd make a motion to approve the replat with the variances voted on.
How do we do that if we have a 3-3 on Brian? We don't have a direction on Brian.
It's the motion, the variance denied. And so they do not get a variance for Brian.
Yeah, unless it's actually approved, I
Right.
mean, it's not, I mean, they don't get the variance granted unless there's a motion approving it. Motion failed, I mean, if we can't get a majority on it, then, I mean, the variance isn't approved. So y'all can try and revote if you want, but.
But not on the same thing.
No, guys, I'm not clear on this. Right, we have a replat that you're asking us to make a motion on. So if we approve it, no matter what the number is, what happens with the variances?
The two that you approved are approved. So Bell Street and Roosevelt are approved. Brian is denied.
Okay.
That's
So they
right.
could move forward. They could move forward if they wanted to. They would have to pay Brian.
They
If
would
we
have to pay-
if we approve the plat, is that correct?
Correct. That is correct.
They
Okay.
can go to city council also for an appeal.
Yeah, and appeal. Yes, absolutely. Okay.
So when I
we have
do-
a motion.
Yep.
We have a motion to approve the plat. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor? We have a motion and a second to approve the plat. All in favor, say aye by show of hands. And then opposed,
So that was 6-0.
6-0. Okay. That one was tricky. Next one is a replat of tract 19 Forest Park acreage addition. A request for approval of a replat of tract 19 Forest Park acreage addition being 0.993 acres located at 2702 Lindell Avenue.
Good morning, Planning Commissioner. Sherry Bailey, Principal Planner. You have before you the replat of tract 19 Forest Park acreage addition. It is actually a very simple replat. The location is 2702 Lindell Avenue. It's between Garfield and Hatcher Street. The zoning here is
Sherry,
R2.
Sherry,
Yes.
can you advance your slides? I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Wasn't moving?
Mm-mm.
There, how about
There
that?
it is. Okay.
Okay. Sorry, I can't really tell if it's not moving forward. The zoning, as I indicated, is R2, two-family residential. The future land use in this area is neighborhood. It's in District 2, Mr. Thompson's district, and it's the Angelo Heights neighborhood. What the applicant wants to do is they live in this property to the rear, and they wanted to do 4 essentially single-family lots in front of theirs, and then have a 20-foot flag access to the back. We had an administrative variance that was granted for the 4 lots with 47.17 feet for each of the lots, and they are not requesting any additional variances at
Okay.
We sent out 20 notices because this is a residential replat, and we received 1 in favor. It does conform with the comprehensive plan in the neighborhood designation. The R2, of course, fits under that. And the neighborhood encourages a diversity of housing. So in this area, there is a mix of housing between single family and 2-family. It is also conforms with the intent and purpose statements. It orderly, safe, and efficient development of the area because this is an infill area. And the plat will also provide for systematic and accurate record of land development. This is a picture of where the 4 lots are going to go. And then the picture on the right shows that the applicant's house in the rear. Staff is recommending the approval of the replat for Forest Park acreage addition with 4 conditions of approval. Installation of a sewer main and required service connections. In this case, there will just be service connections. Install necessary water and wastewater service lines to each new lot. Prepare and submit plans for required improvements to the Lindell Avenue. In this case, Lindell Avenue is 36 feet wide with curb and gutter, and the applicant has agreed to put in a sidewalk across the front property lines. And a drainage study shall be submitted. There's also a note on this just for the applicant's information. Depending on where the buildings are located, a fire hydrant may be required. With that, are there any questions?
Anyone have questions for the staff? All right, I'm going to open it up for public comment. If you wish to speak on this case, please state your name and your single member district or your address.
Sherry, if you could stop sharing your screen, we can see. There we go. I'm not seeing anyone on the call for public comment.
There is not. The applicant's representative had an emergency this morning and could not be here.
Okay. So I'm going to close public comment. Anyone have thoughts or wish to make a motion?
Sorry, muted. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve as presented. All in favor, say aye by show of hands. And opposed?
6-0.
All right. Related comprehensive plan amendment and rezoning. City Council has final authority for approval of comprehensive plan amendments and rezoning 607, 609 Locust Street. CP 20-07, 607, 609 Locust Street. Request for approval of an amendment to the City of San Angelo Comprehensive Plan, changing certain lands from the open space and neighborhood center future land uses to the neighborhood land use being 0.321 acres located at 607 and 609 Locust Street. I'm going to read this next case too. Z 20-18, 607 and 609 Locust Street, a request for rezoning from single-family residence, RS1 zoning district to two-family residence zoning district being 0.321 acres located at 607 and 609 Locust Street.
And again, this is Sherry Bailey. What you have before you is the two factions on these two small lots. As you can see, those lots are located right here. In front of them, originally, all 5 lots were part of the city-owned land. This was the old city maintenance building. They put the land out for bid. One person purchased these 3 lots in the maintenance building, and the applicant before you purchased these 2 lots behind that with the intent to build a duplex on each one of the lots. Presently, one of the lots is listed as open space. That's this one in the comprehensive plan. And the second one is listed as neighborhood center. The zoning in the area is RS1, and they're asking to rezone it to RS2 to accommodate the duplexes. The total area is a 0.3214 acreage. It's in single member District 4, Lucy Gonzalez's district, and it's in the central neighborhood. Here you can see where the 2 lots, each one being designated on the comprehensive plan. One is open space, one is neighborhood center. But this is the RS1 zoning in which they're requesting to go to R2. And you can see in this area, it's a mix of zonings existing now.
Isn't there an apartment complex on the front of this, like on that Bryant frontage or Houston Hart frontage? Excuse me.
Houston Hart frontage, it's down from there. There is an apartment complex, yes.
To the west?
To the west.
Thank you.
There's an office commercial over here. There's an office warehouse here. And then just over here, there's a bed and breakfast. And next to it is a 2-family structure, a couple of 2-family structures. The other factor that really is not at play in the request before you, but this is just for your information. In this case, the floodplain does impact these 2 lots. The applicant is aware of that, and they realize that they will have to work with the engineering department and will have to build above the base floor level. But the floodway itself, which is this area, does not impact these 2 lots. This is a picture. This is the existing maintenance building. And this to the north is a nonprofit facility where there's counseling and gathering at that facility. And then this is a picture of the 2 pieces of property. We sent out 9 notices. We did not receive any in favor or opposed to the request. Under the comprehensive plan amendment, the rationale is that this area of the community has historically been residential, and it has evolved into a mixed use area. The water and sewer infrastructure is in the alley, it's in the street, the area is already planted. There exists a real mix of uses, as you could see when we presented the rezoning. And the area itself is still a very vital area, and it's still thriving. And the multiple uses fit well into that neighborhood. So amending the plan to neighborhood allows the existing mix to continue and allows the applicant to accomplish what he wants to do. The open space, which is one of the lots comprehensive plan designation, is really more appropriate across Veterans Memorial River Drive in that open area along the river rather than in this subdivided area. And then the rationale under the rezoning is very similar to what I indicated in the comprehensive plan. The existing area is again, is a mix of uses with residential being the predominant one. And the applicant really wants to build a single duplex on each one of the lots with the intent to meet a need that's been expressed in the city for rental area for families that's not totally located within a large apartment complex area. If you take a closer look at the neighborhood areas, we really get a feel for all of the different kinds of uses in the area and how they fit together. The area has continued to change over time and develop, and it will continue to do that as it moves through. That's normal, particularly with the older areas in the city. We do not anticipate that there will be any negative effects on the river area and the open space area with this development. And as I indicated before, duplexes are really a need in the rental community within the city, and this would definitely meet that. The existing streets are already built out. They already meet the needs of the neighborhood. These two duplexes adding 4 new families or rental groups to the area would not significantly increase the traffic in the area. So staff is recommending approval of the request to amend the comprehensive plan from open space and neighborhood commercial to neighborhood, and also to approve the request to rezone the property from single family residence RS1 to 2-family residence RS2. Are there any questions?
All right. No questions for Sherry. We're going to open it up for public comment. If you wish to speak on this case, please state your name and your address.
I don't believe we have anyone for public comment on this case.
All right, I'm going to close public comment. Anyone wish to make a motion or offer their thoughts?
Make a motion.
Yeah. Go ahead, Brittany.
Yeah, motion to approve. Thanks, Terry.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve as presented. All in favor, say aye by show of hands. Opposed?
6-0.
Thank you.
All right. Rezonings. City Council has final authority for approval of rezonings. PD 20-03, 2838 South College Hills Boulevard. Request for approval of a rezoning from the general commercial and single-family residential zoning districts to a planned development zoning district to allow for sports facility, related recreational activities and events, and other improvements as shown on a concept plan, being 21.536 acres located at 2838 South College Hills Boulevard.
Thanks, Commissioners. Jeff Fisher, Principal Planner. Our next case is PD 2002. It's 3824 Green Meadow Drive. So back in 2019, this applicant, this is the Next Level Sports Complex, got a special use approval on city leased land for this multi-sports complex. It included an indoor facility that's got a gym and baseball facility. It's also got an outdoor component. It recognized the existing mini golf and golf driving range that was already on the property. One of the buildings has a restaurant and a clubhouse. There's also a little storage building here. So it's a combination of indoor and outdoor that was approved. A couple months ago, the applicant had put in a caliche parking lot outside for another approximately 50 parking spaces. That was not approved on the original concept plan. A portion of that was also in the FEMA land. And so planning and engineering worked together. And the decision was that to resolve at least the planning issues, Next Level Sports would come back in for to do a PD. The PD would allow a caliche parking lot. If they did the special use, we couldn't amend the parking standards through a special use. And so that would have required a second step to go to the Zoning Board of Adjustment to allow this. So the PD basically allows what was in the special use. If this is approved today or at City Council, it would revoke the special use. The PD would encapsulate all of those standards, as well as the Caliche parking lot. So that's basically where we're at. We also, there were some complaints about lighting. So we also revisited the lighting issue and put some conditions on that regarding the lights. So we'll move forward. This is District 5, Lane Carter in the Vista Del Arroyo neighborhood. The future land use is open space, and the zoning is CG and RS1. All of the uses are in the CG portion of the property. So the site plan building permit process is already complete. The applicant has already put in all of the buildings on the property. Everything is operational. The only thing is, again, this Caliche parking lot that was added here. So his concept plan is amended. It was originally going to be for a future possible another building. And so this would allow either he can still go ahead with the building, or he can use it as a Caliche parking lot. So it's basically to allow both. And this is some pictures of the outdoor driving range. So some of the neighbors on Cumberland, they're over 1,500 feet away, but they can still see, as you can see at night, some of the lights here. So my understanding is there will be an ordinance going forward tomorrow to City Council that would look at amending some of those lighting standards. And I don't want to get into it too much. I do have a representative from code compliance, I believe, that's here in case this comes up. But long story short, we're going to put a condition that says the lights are turned off by 10:30, and also that they shine on a more of a downward angle, and that hopefully will help the residents a bit. But in terms of what's glare and what's not glare is really a separate city code and not part of the PD today. So I'm just letting you know that. So we received our 6 notices were mailed. We did not receive any in favor. We did receive 1 in opposition to the case, opposing the PD and the lights, and then 3 other complaints just had the concerns about the lights. So these are the 4 property owners on Cumberland here. No one else had responded. So this is the area in question that's going to have the possible Caliche parking lot. So this was the original concept plan overlaid with the possible parking lot. This was originally going to be a building. They could still do a building here, or they can do a Caliche parking lot. This was a lighting plan provided by the applicant, a photometric plan. This basically shows that there's no spillover past this point, which is the city leased area. And then it's another, I'd say about 1,200 feet from this blue line down to where those property owners are. But again, that is just basically saying there's no light trespass. That still doesn't mean there's not a glare. And so again, that's a separate code. The applicant has provided some lighting plans that he wanted me to share. So he's indicating that the proposed lighting would be a 70% reduction when he puts in the new LED lights. I did go out and meet with code compliance and our assistant director several months back. Unfortunately, I can't confirm what was there before and what was there now, but this is what he's provided. So I just wanted to share that. So staff rationale on this, it's compatible with the open space designation, which allows recreational uses. That's what this is. He's got some outdoor and indoor. It's consistent with the zoning ordinance. It would comply with all the CG standards. The only thing that staff is opposing is the Caliche parking lot. We believe that the section of the zoning ordinance that speaks to parking, minimum spacing and maneuvering areas is for public safety and also to prevent runoff. It's very close to South College Hills, very visible to the public. I went out there, I took a couple site visits, one last weekend and one during the week. And I can tell you that it's fairly full, and that's great as his business is succeeding. But those cars are coming in and out, and I think having some minimal striping, maneuvering areas and distances is just better for safety. So staff is opposing that. We would support the rest of the request. It's compatible with the surrounding area. As you know, you've got the Red Arroyo Trail, the College Hills Racket Club. So there's a lot of recreational uses, and I think from that side of things, staff is in support. The new Caliche parking lot is what triggered the subject request. I believe Mr. Box is working with engineering services, and as I understand, has removed all of the portion of the Caliche parking lot that's in the floodway. However, the remainder is in the floodplain, and so they will need a floodplain development permit, what they already obtained amended again, that's something that they're working with engineering. So we just wanted to point that out. And there wouldn't be any changes to development patterns. They still have access off of College Hill. So staff is recommending approval of a rezoning from the CG district and RS1 districts to the planned development district to allow a sports facility with the related recreational activities and events and other improvements as shown on a revised concept plan, with the one exception that all parking shall be paved per the requirements of the zoning ordinance. And again, subject to the 8 conditions, I'll go over those quick. It generally conforms with the CG zoning district, minus the parking issue, and it will. Also that there's a minimum 22.5-foot front yard setback for the gym. That was already approved through administrative adjustment. So we just wanted to make sure that the PD covered that. The overall site use is in accordance with the approved concept plan. That they obtain approval from the floodplain manager for all development in the floodplain and floodway. Understand they're working through that. An urban design review is amended. And this would just be to allow, if we allow that as a caliche parking lot, and maybe some of the lighting standards are just repeated. It's not going to revisit everything that's already built. So we're not going to require any additional standards on what's already there. It's just for the new uses. A parking lot permit is required since they've already got their building permits. A parking lot permit would be required for that new parking lot, whether you approve it as caliche or an all-weather surface. And then this is the change on the lighting. So the original approval basically said all the events stop at 11:30. So we're changing that to 10:30 and saying that the lights are also turned off by 10:30. So that'll at least help after 10:30. And also that their lights are downward emitting and shielded if necessary. And finally, that this will revoke and replace the PD. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. This concludes our presentation. I'll open that up to any public comment y'all have.
Jeff, the biggest thing that I have questions on is the lighting, truthfully. I mean, those lights did shine pretty bright. I know you sent out some photos and you could see those in those people's yards. With College Hill Swim and Racket being in the same neighborhood, what is their cutoff time for their lighting?
I missed that last part,
With
Commissioner Davis.
College Hill Swim and Racket being right in the same neighborhood, what time do they have to have their lights turned off by?
I'm not aware of anything on that project, and I don't believe there's a standard. I think, but I do think that in code compliance, if they're here, can correct me. I believe there's a city ordinance that requires basically any noise or loudness or anything that's causing a nuisance. I think there is a 10:30 provision on that, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
As far as I know, yes. I think they shut them off by 10 p.m.
Sir, they close at 9 o'clock.
Okay, well, we'll get to the public here in just a second. Daniel, can you at least introduce yourself so that the commissioners know who you are?
I'm Daniel Fisher. I'm a code officer with the city of San Angelo.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Has the applicant presented like any screens that he was planning on putting on those lights? I mean, they are pretty darn bright, and even driving down College Hills at 10 o'clock at night, I mean, like they're very, very visible. So I could see that being a huge complaint to the neighboring properties, especially, I mean, that driving range has been there for years. And, you know, apparently over the last course of 2 years or however long Mr. Box has owned it, you know, they feel like the light has gotten considerably brighter. I don't know if additional lights were added or just the change from fluorescent to LED bulbs, but I mean, I could definitely see that being an issue for the neighborhood.
Daniel, did you want to address that or did you want me to?
It doesn't matter. You can go ahead, Jeff. The only thing I have on that one is that the shielding that if they provide any more shielding, he had the lights pointing towards their properties at the beginning. I don't know how the old ones were. I never got to see those ones, but these ones were pretty bright. The pictures that Jeff has, it's less brighter than what it was earlier, and that was the issue the complainant was bringing on. And I guess he adjusted some of the lights, but it's still one of the things also I want to bring up, that the standard lighting that we're issuing, that it's being reworded tomorrow, just like Jeff said earlier, and they're going to wording it with the same as the light trespass. So I don't know what's going to end up happening there with they're going to put it as a 0.5. That was a reading the same as a trespass. The lights are pretty bright on the back. When he adjusted it, it did take off a lot of that glare. And those are the pictures that Jeff brought, but you can still see the brightness on there.
So one option would be, and I think this is what Mr. Box had explained to me, and if he's here, he can comment, but I think if they were to they did tilt them more on an angle, Commissioner
Yes,
Davis, but I think the issue he was saying to me, at least, Daniel can correct me, is if he fully shielded them or made them fully shine down, all of them, then the golf driving range wouldn't be visible for the customers. And so it was kind of a balancing act between, adhering to the residents' concerns, which we're certainly concerned about, and also allowing the business to be visible from where the tee-off point was.
So on the LED lights, aren't they a lot brighter than your regular light bulb? Daniel,
Yeah, maybe Daniel, I don't know. I mean, obviously LEDs have the visual look of brightness. Most of them are similar in wattage to what the regular incandescent would be. I don't think we have a lighting expert, but I mean, even if you put them in your house, you can see the difference as you install them.
And I think, I don't know if you all had received, we got it this weekend and I forwarded it to you on Saturday, but Miss Poppy had sent in a letter, and I think the request was that they had some sort of lighting expert maybe that would look at that. I mean, it's very hard, I think, for staff. I know Daniel's department has a little more experience with measuring light foot candles, but I think that would be hard to determine based on what we had received.
Okay. I have a question about the parking lot. You said there was a portion of the Caliche lot that was in the floodway and another portion in the floodplain. Do you have something that delineates those different areas? And is Next Level allowed to construct improvements within the floodway or just the floodplain? How does that work?
Mr. Overstreet.
Yeah, Lance Overstreet Engineering Services. The floodplain designation is actually something that comes from FEMA, and it's part of the flood insurance rate maps. And in the area that is designated as floodway, the only way the construction can occur in that area is they actually have to do a no-rise study. It's an engineered study that's modeled, and that has to be performed 1,500 feet upstream and 1,500 feet downstream from that location. And there can be no rise in the flood levels in the floodway period. Once you get outside of that more strict area into the floodplain, all of the construction that goes in there has to actually be at or above the base flood elevations plus 2 foot, which is a local ordinance that we have adopted. All of that is actually reviewed and looked at from the engineering's office as the floodplain administrators.
So they can't put asphalt in the floodway. Is that correct?
They cannot do anything in construction in the floodway without that engineering study.
Without that study. Okay. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to open this up for public comment. If you wish to speak on this case, if you would, please state your name and either your single member district or your address, please.
This is Mary Ann White. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
I live at 3020 Cumberland Drive. I have lived there ever since I was born, and that was 50 some odd years ago. So I just wanted to let you know that I have been there when the old lights were there. I currently still live there. The lights are considerably brighter. I have consulted a lighting expert, which I strongly suggest that the city consult one. he told me that the way the lights are rated is during their daylight photopic, I believe is the rating. And then there's scotopic, which is how your lights look at things at night, how your eyes look at things at night. Basically, he said that most ratings are in the daylight, the photopic range. And he said that basically LED lights are 4 times brighter at night than the old halides were. So you basically have to divide the output of that Mr. Box provided of 2.2 million lumens by 4. And that would be the equivalent for LED lights. So it'd be something like 630,000 lumens for the LED lights. So basically what he's provided is, it's quite less than that. Sorry, 6. Sorry. Basically what he's provided is that if you hired a lighting expert, they would tell you that the output is currently more than what it would be for the old lights. And basically I can walk through my house at night, not turn on a single light and not trip on anything. I can see everything. I'm also concerned, we can't do anything outdoors at night. You can't like have a cookout or whatever after dark because it's so bright you can't see anybody. I'm concerned that the city manager is going to put a hold on enforcing outdoor lighting violations. I understand that's coming up in the council meeting. Mr. Box did lower the lights down, but then now all of a sudden one is back up and shining right straight on our backyards. So anyway, that's my concerns.
Okay. Mary Ann, thank you. Does anyone have questions for Mary Ann? All right. Does anyone else wish to speak on this case?
Jennifer, y'all are muted. Can you unmute? Okay, at the very bottom left of your screen, if you're on a computer, if you'll kind of put your mouse down there, it shows to stop the camera and start and stop that. There you go.
Can y'all hear me now?
We can hear. Hold on, Sean. Jennifer, we still see if y'all can talk. Can you hear us? Okay, we're not hearing you for some reason. It did unmute, but it's still not hearing you. Sometimes if you will log out and log back in, our administrator will be able to let you back in immediately. So try to close down Zoom and come back and see if that'll work, and it'll see if it'll connect. So if y'all will get out and come back in, we'll go at that time.
Are you talking to me?
No, I'm sorry, Sean. You had someone else. Go ahead, Sean.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I don't need to restart?
No, you're good.
Okay. So a couple of things. So one, on the lights, the original lights that were there, yes, they were metal halide, and they were pointing directly out. And when I had first bought the property, I actually took a picture of it and I went through all my pictures and found it. And I think there was probably 22 lights that were out there. And then the metal halides are just not very energy efficient. And then the lumens on them were they were a lot higher. So, I mean, I didn't change the lights. I mean, they've been there since the 80s. I mean, this driving range has been here forever. So all I did is just change the fixtures. And I think I only have like 12 fixtures up right now. And when I first put them up, yes, they were pointing straight out because that's how the old ones were. And, I didn't think any different. And now I've probably adjusted them. I think you can ask the code of compliance, Daniel, I've probably adjusted them 5 different times to just try, because I understand, I'm not trying to be difficult, but at the same time, after I've already invested all this money and put all this in, and now it's been there since the 80s, you're trying to tell me I can't have the lights, even though I've tried to adjust them and I've got a shield on them, pointed them down. And then that's where I've got, I don't understand all the lumens and all that, but that's where I've got that reading where the guy came in and, wherever the light trespass and all that is, and none of the light goes anywhere close past my property. Now, is there a glare? Yes. I mean, it's the same thing with the tennis court lights. When they turn theirs on, I can see it back this way. There's a glare. They've been there a long time. So, I don't know what else to do. I mean, I pointed them down. I've tried to, the one did go up. That's got adjusted as soon as he called me. Not sure how it went up. The wind blows on those sometimes, but it's pointed back down. So they're all pointed down. And the difficult thing is I'm trying to help her, make her happy or them. But at the same time, when the golfers come out, all they do is complain is they can't see. So it's just a difficult deal that this is, after I've built and done all this should be something that's simple and easy. So that's on the lights. On the parking lot, where that pad is now, or the caliche, that was actually during the construction phase. That's where all the building and construction went on. So of course, during that, it all kind of turned to dirt. And when I first opened, when we have tournaments and leaves, there's just a lot more people that come in, that are coming in and leaving. Well, the first time they drove out there and parked on it, it was not made for that. Well, it rained. And then of course they drive on that, it turns to mud. They tracked it in the parking lot and on the street. So my thought is because I don't know what's going there. It could be a parking lot, it could be a building, but that's just down the road. So I put in some caliche just to keep the mud and the dirt and use it for overflow parking. And then that's when kind of all this came up. Yes, some of it went in the floodway. That was a mistake on my part, but we got with Lance, that's all been removed. None of it is in the floodway. It's only in the floodplain where a building can eventually go. And my thing is if I go pave that and then in a year I decide to build a building, well, it has to all be tore up and then I have to start back over. And there's examples kind of all over town, like Western, Northern, all the baseball fields, they have overflow parking and they're all caliche type parking. And two other examples, I have a house at the lake. The KOA, I mean, y'all kind of did the same thing that I did. Those people parked there and it was a mud hole. So y'all put caliche there for them to park. And that was kind of what I did. And then even Pauline, I go to Pauline and they have a big caliche parking lot. So, if I don't ever build a building there and I decide in 6 months or a year, I have no problem paving it. It's just if I go pave it now and then I build a building, with the floodway being the issue, where I can put building is very valuable land, and to put a parking lot in that spot where I can only build the land, it's kind of difficult at this time to do that. So that's kind of some of the reasoning behind it.
Okay.
Just want to address Sean's point about the parking. So the condition of approval, if he goes ahead and ends up putting a building there, then he's not going to have to pave that. He'll may have to put the surface under the building, whatever those standards are, but then that would just be done. It's only if he chooses to put in and keep it as a parking lot, he'll have to pave it. So if he comes back, let's say next month, and he pulls a building permit there. Now, one of the problems is that he's very tight for space in the floodplain. And so he's got the existing parking lot, I believe, has 80 spaces and he needs 65 for what he's got. Problem's going to be if he goes to put a building there, he's eventually going to be short parking and then he's going to need to find another spot for a parking lot anyway. So I think we're just saying if he chooses to keep it as a parking lot, he has to pave it. But if he will not have to pave it if he puts a building in that location.
Jeff, is there a time restraint on his decision?
No.
Is there a better place on that site for parking, Sean?
I mean, eventually, and that's another thing is eventually, you know, there is a baseball field that, you know, in the big scheme of things, it's just, you know, it's the way the economy is, you know, I'm not going to jump out and do that right now until, you know, figure out what's going on. But when those next buildings in the next phase, that's when I will probably have to do that, you know, hydraulic study. And yes, there is room for other parking down lower, but, you know, I can't really touch that ground until I do the hydraulic study. But that won't really come until, you know, what is the next phase. And, you know, at this point, I can't tell you what it is. You know, I can't just jump out and do something when I know it's not going to be successful. And, you know, another thing that the one reason why I came here was the location and the trail. You know, there's a lot of people that walk that trail, and there's a lot of people that park in my parking lot. You know, I don't say anything. I'm not going to go up to them and tell them, hey, you can't park in this. But, you know, there's just it's not just my people. It's, you know, people for whatever reason, they came accustomed to parking here because it is convenient to the trail. So I don't know if that answered your question. Yes, there is other places to put the parking lot, but until I can figure out where a building is going, you know, I just don't want to double, you know, do something twice.
Okay. Anyone else have questions or thoughts? For
I
Sean
believe
Bach?
Yeah, I was about to say, Travis, I believe we have one more. Jennifer was signed up to speak. We'll see if she can get, she was having trouble with her mic, so.
Can you hear us now?
Yes.
Oh, here we go. Okay, finally. Oh, gosh. Jennifer Poppy, Shane Bearden here. We live on Cumberland, and our house, the back
Hold
of
on,
our
Jennifer.
home faces Next Level Sports.
Hold on, Jennifer, 1 second.
And-
If everyone else could mute their microphones real quick, that'll help us with Jennifer's thing.
I think she's connected twice, Hillary.
Okay. Is it working? Is it still working? Are you able to hear me?
Yes, and if you have your
Okay,
other computer still on, you might close it because it may be echoing in your house as well.
Okay, I think we got everything closed now.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, sorry. Our home is on Cumberland and it faces Next Level Sports, and we are approximately 1,800 feet away from the complex. And we're in opposition of this PD 2003 because of the unresolved light glare and light trespass and uncontrolled beams of the LED lights that's been ongoing since February. The owner has pointed the lamps downward. However, the light trespass still occurs. It shines on the back of our home through our windows, even with the shades closed. It shines on our faces when we sit on our back porch swing, and my immediate neighbors are having the same issues, and also some homes on A&M and Vista del Arroyo. The code compliance has been to our home a few times, and they have told the owner he must shield the lights, and they're still unshielded, which I guess that's why the light trespass is still occurring. So we are pretty concerned about this, especially if there's more lighting to be added, including with baseball fields and such. To answer Terry Jackson's question earlier, she asked if LEDs were brighter, and they are, and their lumens are actually calculated differently as well. You can't use a regular meter to measure in foot candles LED lighting because they mostly emit scotopic lumens, and they can't be detected by a meter like the older bulbs and metal halides can. Metal halides, they excrete the photopic lumens that can be detected by a meter. So I'm guessing what's happened is the LEDs that the owners put up, they exceed the equivalent wattage and lumens of the previous metal halides. And now we've ended up with way overpowered LED lights. So I'm guessing that's why the light trespass is occurring. And it's pretty debilitating for a lot of neighbors in the area. You want to add anything?
Yeah, like she was saying, the different lumens that the LEDs put out, And looking over Mr. Box's plan, the math does not add up with the photopic versus the scotopic lumens.
We don't have a
And-
reduction on that.
And no, there is zero reduction in light.
Okay. Well, does anyone have questions for?
Yeah, Mr. Box, and I don't know if this is going to make sense, and I'm definitely not an LED lighting expert by any means, but if you typically buy, let's say, indoor LED lighting, you've got 3,000 lumens, 4,000, 5,000, and it goes from soft white to bright white. Do you have any idea what is in the light fixtures that you've got out there?
Okay, now can you hear me?
Yeah.
I mean, and like I said, I'm not a light expert either. But I guess the color, like it's like 3,000, 4,000, I guess like the yellow to the white to the blue. Well, from what I found, from what mine are to metal halides, they're exactly the same. I think they're like around 4,500 or 45,000, whatever that is. So like I said, I'm not a light expert. I just go off of what was there and what it says that I have now. So yeah, I guess as far as the color, they're actually rated the same as what I have now. And then, that's what I went off of. The watts are a lot less. The lumens are a lot less. Hopefully that answered your question.
On page 10 of the report, it does show what is in the lights currently. 9 of the LED bulbs look like they're 300 watts, which is equivalent to a 100 watt metal halide bulb. Now the other 9 LED lights that are up currently, they are over 300 watts. So they are not the equivalent. They far exceed the previous metal halide bulbs. And on page 10, I guess that was shown in a photo with some handwritten notes. And I'm guessing that's why that the light is so much brighter, is because they're not the equivalent of what was there previously. And my family's owned this home for 40 years, and we've never had trouble with the previous driving range lighting reaching and illuminating our property.
And I want to, staff totally understands the concerns of the neighbors. I want to at least explain to Planning Commission that planning staff and the zoning ordinance do not really speak to what they are referencing. So we have to be very careful in the conditions we put on the plan development that they are enforceable. So we would love to work together. I know code compliance is trying to work the best they can. I would hate to start specifying lumens and things that we cannot enforce because we don't have the equipment and the measurements to do these things. So, the reason we looked at the time limit was to help hopefully do the best we can with the time. If y'all see anything else that we could easily, go out there and enforce, I think the shielding is another option. I know Jeff has looked into that. Again, it's a balance between shielding the neighbors and lighting the driving range. But again, I would be hesitant to specify a lumen or something that staff would be unable to enforce, as we don't have the capability to do those things. So please keep that in mind as you go forward with your decision.
Well, and our concern with the new zoning changes that he is requesting is with the addition of the fields that are going in, or that he wants to do. As bright as it is now, like Ms. White said earlier, you trip in the backyard. Even on the walking trail, it's so bright when you're walking into those lights that you can't see what's on the ground.
Well, and again, I completely understand. What I was trying to say is that's not really in the zoning ordinance. Those provisions are in a different section of our ordinance. So what we are doing here is rezoning the property to allow the use. We do have some provisions that would allow us to, help by the times and different things like that. And we appreciate your comments. We want to work. I don't want to say we can do, I'm sorry, I'm probably the least lighting expert, but I don't want to say we can do 100 watts and then we learned that that's not enough or that we didn't know. So I just caution the board. This is again to allow the use of the property as a sports facility. So, please be aware of that. And again, we'll continue. I know Jeff has worked with you guys, so continue to call in and talk to us and we'll do what we can, but let's make sure that we keep this about the land use of the property.
Okay. Hillary, I understand what you're saying. And I think the point that they're trying to make is that we're approving the expansion of this facility with more lighting if they add baseball fields.
Yeah.
And that's a concern to them because the lighting that's there is already a problem. So what do
Please
we
be
do?
aware that
How do we
that backs
plan
up onto
for the
residential.
expansion? How do we plan for the expansion of this facility and the lighting that would accompany that expansion in a way that is minimally invasive on the neighboring properties?
Sure. And that expansion is already actually approved through the special use. We were replacing it because he was seeking to use the parking lot as an unpaved surface. So currently today, he could add the baseball fields, he could add the buildings as it was shown in the original special use. We were replacing it simply because the zoning ordinance calls for any parking lot to be paved. And the request that Sean had was to leave it unpaved at this point. So currently, baseball fields, the stuff that's shown in the concept plan would be allowed through the special use that was already approved. So again, this is a simply, I guess we thought it'd be an easier way to do this. We could have allowed an amendment to the special use site plan, which allowed the parking lot. He would then have to have gone to ZBA to vary the zoning ordinance. So instead of trying to go through multiple steps, staff decided to do a plan development and let the commission decide on these things. So this is replacing the special use that is already approved. So he can withdraw this at this point, pave the parking lot, and be allowed to expand as shown on the plans.
Okay. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on this case? All right, I'm going to close public comment. Anyone wish to make a motion or share their thoughts?
Yeah, I have a quick, not really a thought, just for what it's worth. Look, I think what Mr. Box said, the case that he made for himself was pretty good, right? He brought up some really good points on some other properties that have temporary parking that are caliche. And I will say that when I was out doing my site visits this weekend, he is not exaggerating that people walking that path use that parking lot or his parking lot. I witnessed it. You know, taking the lighting out of it, when you look at what's been done to that property and the stages that moving forward, you know, he's got a lot of ideas and he's right. Like, so today, I think in the current climate, you probably would need to be a little bit cautious on your growth plan and the speed of it. So I have personally, I have zero problem with the way that parking lot is today. I'm not going to say leave it that way for 10 years. But I think that he has a great case for bringing up, and it was smart of him to bring up other properties that do it. But I have zero problem with the way that parking lot is today, because it would be unfair if a year from now they decide to pull the trigger on something. And, you know, I haven't paved a parking lot in a long time, but I know what it costs to resurface them. So I couldn't imagine what it costs to build them from scratch. And I know we typically don't take price into consideration as a commission. But I would say that whether it costs $1 to do it or $100,000 to do it, it shouldn't make any difference if it just doesn't make sense. I couldn't imagine him paving that spot and then next year having it dug up. We certainly wouldn't do it when we look at variances where streets are going to be have water mains and things like that changed out. We would never approve those to be paved. We would never ask for someone to pave them. So I'm perfectly fine right now with the way that parking lot is.
So do we set a timeline on when to address this, or do we just, if we approve it, if we approve the variance, there's no, we don't have any provision at this point that would require them to pave it down the road. And as you said, if it's 5 or 10 years from now and they've still got the same facilities, are you happy with a caliche parking lot, or at what, how do we trigger some requirement down the road for them to pave it if they never put a building on that pad?
So what we have in front of us is changing the rezoning. Right now, we have a special use permit or condition, and though that has certain criteria that Sean has to meet in order to keep everything the way it is. He's under guidelines by the special use permit. What he's applied for is a plan development, and within that plan development, they can decide, Sean, with the engineer and all that, is my understanding, that they can decide when he would pave it or not. Is that correct, Hillary?
No, I think if you allow the plan development without a paved parking lot today, then there would be no trigger, as Travis was saying. Now, if you approve the plan development and said within 5 years, the parking lot must be paved, then we could go back at that point and say, okay, it's been 5 years, the building's not there, we need the parking lot paved. I think 5 years is a little long. Please remember that this is an unpaved parking lot in the floodway. So although it's not in the flood, it's in the floodplain. Although it's not in the floodway, the floodplain still does, when we get our annual rains, it still does take out quite a bit of that. So with just a stabilized base, we could see a lot of washout each time. And I understand his case for the temporary use of it, but this is not a temporary use. If you've been to his site, again, Jeff suggested it's used regularly. And I mean, that's great. I'm glad that the facility is doing
Business is great.
Do what?
I would say business is great. They stayed
Well,
slammed.
I hope
They've been
so. I mean, I
very
hope
good.
it's, I mean, I think that it's going great. I hope it is. And we want to continue supporting his success. But that same, like Jeff was saying, if you just have compacted base and you're using it on a regular basis, that begins to break down as well. So that was our concern, was being in the floodplain and being used on a regular basis. The surface, although nice at this point, would deteriorate over time.
Yeah, so just if nothing changed right now and this was approved, say with a paved parking lot, he would have at least until the end of city council, which would be now with the holidays coming up, would probably, the second reading wouldn't be, I think, till January the 12th. So nothing would have to, he wouldn't have to do anything until at least January 12th. And then if you put a time condition on it and, delayed that, there could be a further extended time past that. I think that would be a possibility. Or you approve his request to allow it as caliche, and then he would never have to pave it. So you'd have several options.
Jeff, what would be an
Okay.
average, timeline? Like if let's say we approved it, knowing that, let's say, I know Hillary thought 5 years was a long time, but within the next 3 to 5 years that there would be a building. I mean, in Sean's defense, I mean, he spent a fortune most likely building that complex and is, wanting to make sure business is strong, especially during COVID-19, before he adds any additional expense. And just as Joseph said, I mean, I'm with him as far as having to pave it right away. But I think that, how long is a reasonable time? Or, I mean, I know Hillary says 5 years, but, Sean, how long did it take you to get your original site plan together and your vision for this?
I mean, it probably took a year, but I mean, I can tell y'all, do I know exactly what's going to go there and when I'm going to do it? No, just, I mean, COVID, everything. But if you haven't been by here, I think I've done it the right way. And if it continues, whether I put a building there or not, I'm not going to leave that thing as caliche. I will want it to look right and paved, but I just can't see doing that now, especially in 6 months, things change and another building goes there and I have to tear it all up. Yes, it does come down from $1 to 100,000. Yeah, it's somewhere in between, but you know, that's something that, you know, if I have to do that and then dig it up, well, then there's a good chance that the building never does come just because of the cost.
So, Sean, do you have it? Would 3 years be long enough for you guys to reach the point where you'd make a decision?
Yeah, I
And
mean,
you'd
to
pave
me,
it?
and yeah, and then I think even if it came to that, and you know, if you could tell me COVID's gonna go away, I would say yes for sure. But who knows? Who knows what's going on? But yeah, I mean, I would that would be plenty time. And then like I said, you know, I'm gonna make it look right. It's just to go and do that now. I don't know if that's the right decision because that space is valuable if another building would go there. So yes, I mean that would be more than fair, and hopefully it would be quicker than that.
Okay,
Yeah, I think Travis, I think 3 years is reasonable.
I agree. So would anyone like to make a motion?
Before anyone makes a motion, are we motioning on the light thing separately?
This is just to approve the PD. The lighting requirements, I guess we could set within the PD. If I think personally, I think the best way to handle the light issue, if we want to address it, is to require some sort of lighting study. Since no one at the city's an expert, and I'm certainly not, I can't rely on the information that we've received in this meeting to make an informed decision. I do know, I know that Angelo State put in lights at their baseball facility recently. They replaced the LED lights, and they emit light almost directly downward in such a way that it is very minimally invasive. And I know that we don't have a lot of complaints around those facilities for lighting. So I know there's got to be a solution somewhere somehow, but I don't know how to determine what's reasonable.
But just to clarify, go ahead, Commissioner.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just gonna say, Sean, when you went to look at changing those lights out, did you talk to like the golf pros or anything at Bentwood even? I mean, because you've got all those houses backing the driving range out there too for a comparison.
No, I mean, it was just those old metal halides, and I was using half the lights. Like I said, after all this is done, you know, I understand their complaints and I've tried to fix it, but after doing all this and it's been here forever, to me, it's a headache that I didn't expect to have, I guess is long story short. Especially
Completely
something that's been here
understand.
since the 80s.
Yeah, and Sean, I'll speak for myself. I don't want to overburden you with documentation or a request, but the problem I have is that LED lights and metal halide lights are different and they're calculated differently. And I'm not well versed enough in lighting to know what that difference is. And I think if the lighting was 100 times brighter today than it was before you guys put the fixtures in, you would agree that that's probably too much light. So how do we determine that? It's got to be calculated, I would think, by a lighting expert. I'm sure there are ways to do it. There's obviously specifications for every light fixture that you've hung that discuss what the light output is. And so I know there's probably a reasonable solution. I just don't know what it is because I'm not informed on lights.
Yeah, and I'm not either, but this last study that I did give Jeff, I mean, that was from a lighting guy to where it said, all I can do is give it to him, but I mean, that does have all the data on there and the information. Now how it's interpreted, you know, it's over my head, but Jeff does have that information. So maybe we could start with that.
So there's, just to clarify this, and Daniel's still on as well. There's two differences, and the new ordinance is basically to, as I understand from Daniel, will eliminate one of those differences. So there's light trespass, which is basically actual spillover of foot candles over the property line, which I understand is not an issue. The lighting, and that's what Sean's given us. The lighting plan shows that there'd be no spillover of the lights. But then there's the actual glare of what you can really see. And I think that's the concern that the residents have, that yes, the actual spillover of the foot candles doesn't go past the property line, but then there's still the glare issue. And I think that's the part that's being, if I understand it correctly, is being eliminated out of the ordinance. And so then that kind of leaves really open to what is causing a nuisance and what is not causing a nuisance. So I think the only way to fix that would be, one of your other recommendations that you may have. I don't think anybody, at least I know I can't determine it based on the plans that I have. And so staff, based on the information we had, we can turn off the lights at 10:30. We can say that they tilt down, but I don't think we have the technology to determine what actually is causing unreasonable glare or not causing an unreasonable glare without more information.
Right.
Hey, Jeff, just to clarify, and Daniel may speak to this, but I'm looking at the ordinance going tomorrow, and I think glare is still included in there. Now, there is that 0.5 foot candles determination included in that as well, but it still says glare as far as I can tell.
Well, and again, like I said, there may be other mechanisms to deal with the light, but I think what we can really look at is we're suggesting it go off by 10:30. We suggested they tilt them down. Some things that planning staff can really monitor.
It already does. The lighting, it already is off at 10:30 each night. And they're tilted downward. And maybe there's not been any complaints with the baseball fields Mr. Stribling voiced about earlier, because they're not used
Not
7
shining into a
nights a
backyard.
week. I'm sorry?
Right.
Well,
I was going to say, it's not shining into a backyard. Like it is in
that, and then
instant.
not on 7 nights a week year round. I mean, this is every single night, every day, 7 days a week. And we're just concerned because part of this PD included some conditions that have to be met, and the 10:30 p.m. lights off, that's already being met. The lights pointing downward, that's already being met, but the glare and the trespass is still an issue, and they're not shielded. And then that's something, we may want to look into. Maybe there's a lot of LED lights around town that are properly shielded. And if Mr. Box could properly shield his lights, that would actually give him more benefit of the LEDs he's got in there, because when you properly shield them, the light will actually illuminate the field or the object that you're trying to light up, because your scatter is not being wasted. But that's why we're here today, is because this was part of his PD plan for approval to meet those conditions. And page 3 states that the staff is confident that there will not be any light trespass. So that's why we're here.
Okay. What is the ordinance on light trespass?
That is not, again, that's not in the zoning ordinance. So it is a different section of the ordinance. It's in the nuisance section, which is not something the planning deals with on a regular basis. That's more of a code compliance section that they deal with regularly. So that's why I was saying, some of this light trespass and stuff is not something that is zoning per se. So what Jeff was requiring was, tilting them downwards, or if they could be shielded, and then the time set. That way we could monitor that.
Does planning approve of permits when the LEDs were replaced from the old metal halides? Is
No.
that a permit that they need to do that planning would be involved in? Or
I cannot speak to the permitting side of it, but planning does not see any, what we look at is the lighting. If they're putting in a new light pole and it's an area where we do a visual check, we'll look at the aesthetics of the light pole, but we don't look at the actual bulbs or the lumens. That's not in the zoning ordinance. So no, we would look at if it's a decorative light pole and we need to see the aesthetic features, but
Yeah, if the parking situation, if that parking lot hadn't have gone in, which would trigger the PD, we may not have been aware at all of any of the changes on the light fixtures as well. So this was our way to at least put some minimum standards in there through the PD. But as Hillary was saying, a lot of that, you know, what's glare, what isn't glare is a separate ordinance.
Thank you.
All right, so does anyone wish to make a motion or have any other thoughts or questions they'd like to share?
Jeff, would you like to put back up your recommendation screen just one final time as we look to make the motion? So go back one screen to the recommendation screen. There you go.
Anyone wish to make a motion?
I'll motion to approve, but as far as the exception that the parking lot needs to be paved, I don't think that needs to occur if we have a 3-year time cap on that for Sean to decide what he's going to do with as far as a building. And then again, just depending on if we can shield the lights or something like that.
What time frame, Brittany?
3 years.
3 years?
Yes, ma'am.
I would second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve with a 3-year timeline for paving the parking lot and some sort of requirement for shielding of lights. All in favor say aye or show of hands. And opposed?
That motion passes 5-0.
Okay. Z 20-19, 1602 Kenwood Drive, a request for rezoning of single-family residential zoning district to the two-family residential zoning district, being 0.207 acres located at 1602 Kenwood.
Good morning, Shelley Pascal, City Planner. This property is being requested from RS1 single family residential to 2-family residential. It is to basically legalize the two family structures that are on the subject property already. This property is located at 1602 Kenwood and it's within District 5 Lane Carter in the neighborhood of Santa Rita. The current zoning is single family residential RS1 and the future land use is neighborhood. And I just wanted to point out here on the map, as you can see, it directly abuts an RS2 district. And if it approved, it would just extend that RS2 district directly from the east. These are the two subject property, or the subject property, both homes that are currently on the subject property. The one on the left is the residence facing Kenwood, and the other one is in the rear of the property. I just took a couple of photos of the homes in the area. As you can see, they're just smaller single-family residential homes. I did send out 25 notifications. I received 0 in favor and actually received 1 in opposition. The proposed RS2, it is consistent with the neighborhood future land use and the comp plan. And both single-family and 2-family residential, they both fit under this residential designation. And it also, the neighborhood policy is to promote neighborhood diversity and housing choices within San Angelo. We feel that this rezoning would support that. We do believe that it is consistent with the existing residential zones in this area and the uses within this neighborhood of Santa Rita. This is an older section of San Angelo, and there is a variety of structure types within this residential district. And there's been several RS2 kind of checkerboard throughout this area that have been approved over time. And this lot does meet the requirements of an RS2. And this area of San Angelo, like I said, is an older area. And it's changed over the years. There are several properties in this area that do currently have the accessory dwellings. And as I showed you on the map, the property directly to the east is already zoned RS2, so this would be an extension of that RS2. The existing uses on the subject property and surrounding properties have existed since around the 1950s. At the time, it was zoned R1, and it did not allow for a two-family. This area of town is known to have accessory apartments and that have turned into second residences over time. The natural effect, we do not feel like there will be any adverse impact on the natural environment. The two residents will remain. And as a community need, San Angelo, we feel San Angelo has a demonstrated community need for living opportunities other than just single family, and allowing this rezoning would go hand in hand with that community need. The existing development patterns in the immediate area reflect the transitional development pattern, which is keeping with the older neighborhoods. And this allowing this rezoning seeks to allow a balance for the allowed for mixed use types. City staff, we are recommending approval of rezoning from single family residential RS1 zoning district to the two family residential district RS2 located at 1602 Kenwood. Is there any questions? Let me stop sharing. Go.
Anyone have questions for staff? I'm going to open it up for public comment.
Good morning, Russell with SKG Engineering. We were just happy to answer any questions and would ask for your approval as presented.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this case? All right, I'm going to close public comment. Anyone have thoughts or wish to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve as presented, please.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve as presented. All in favor, say aye by show of hands. And opposed?
5-0.
5-0. Additional uses, the Planning Commission has final authority for approval. Appeals may be directed to the City Council. CU 20-16, 3150 Bryant Boulevard. Request for approval of a conditional use to allow wholesale trade in the general commercial zoning district located at 3150 North Bryant Boulevard.
Travis, I need to recuse myself, please.
Okay. We still have a quorum, so I think we're good.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, this property might look a little familiar to you. We did a zone change a few months back to allow the general commercial. And the conditional use that's being proposed to allow wholesale trade is not an allowed right, or not allowed by right within general commercial. This property is in District 2, Tom Thompson, and it's within the Riverside neighborhood. Here's a couple of maps of the future land use and the zoning. As you can see, the future land use is now commercial and the zoning is general commercial. I just wanted to show you kind of the site plan of what's being proposed on the property. And a couple of photos of the subject property. And this is looking directly across North Bryant. And this is a commercial business that is directly south of the subject property. There is single family residential northeast of the subject property, and directly north of the subject property is a multifamily apartment complex. The subject property was recently approved for a zone change, as I stated. With staff feeling that it was a better fit along North Bryant to be commercial. The proposed wholesale trade would create an adverse impact on the neighborhood, on the neighboring residential properties. However, we have looked at that and taken that into consideration, and some of our conditions is for the screening of fencing and proper shielding of lights to minimize that impact. It is zoned general commercial as of November 3rd, 2020, by adoption of an ordinance by City Council. The specific wholesale trade is the sale of farm or ranch supplies that would only be allowed within general commercial by approval of a conditional use. This use is similar in intensity and could automatically be allowed. Similar uses in intensity to what could automatically be allowed in general commercial. There is a multifamily apartment complex directly to the north of the subject property and single-family residential homes northeast of the subject property. However, this development is directly along North Bryant, which is a major arterial. And in this area, along North Bryant, is mostly commercial. We do not anticipate any negative effects on the natural environment other than the construction phase of the buildings and of the business going in. There is a community need for commercial and or wholesale trade in San Angelo, and specifically along the Bryant Boulevard. Staff believes that this is a suitable location. The existing development patterns for the area are mostly commercial, like I said, specifically along North Bryant. I did send out 9 notifications. I did not receive any in favor nor opposition. City staff, we are recommending approval of a conditional use to allow a wholesale trade in the general commercial zoning district, subject to 2 conditions of approval. We are requiring that a minimum 6-foot tall opaque privacy fence be installed along at least the northeastern property line, and that any lighting at the rear of the property be shielded in order to reduce the glare for nearby residents. Any questions?
Anyone have questions for Shelley? All right, we're going to open it up for public comment. If you wish to speak on this case, please state your name, your single member district.
Good morning. Again, Juan Vasquez with Vasquez Engineering. I'm here representing the developer for Tractor Supply Company here. We're happy to be in the city of San Angelo. We've gone through staff's comments. We're in agreement with the 6-foot tall opaque privacy fence along the northeastern property line. As far as the lighting, that shouldn't be an issue. The only lights that we have in the back of the property are on the building, so those will be down shielded. And be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Juan. So anyone else wish to speak on this case? If you would, please come forward, state your name. All right, I'm going to close public comment. Any of the commissioners have thoughts or wish to make a motion, please?
Motion to approve as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve as presented. All in favor, say aye with show of hands. And opposed?
4-0.
4-0. All right, CU 20-17, 1810 Shady Point Circle. Request for approval of a renewal of a conditional use for a short-term rental within the existing single-family dwelling in the single-family 1 RS1 zoning district located at 1810 Shady Point Circle.
Good morning once again. This is Sherry Bailey, Principal Planner. You have before you one of our first short-term rentals that was ever approved once the ordinance was adopted. This is their second renewal at 1810 Shady Point Circle Drive. They were first approved in 2017. There are on the record no police call outs to this site and no complaints with code enforcement. It is in District 1, Mr. Hebert's district, and it's in the Nasworthy neighborhood. You can see the area is in a neighborhood future land use. This is the site for the short-term rental, and it is in keeping with neighborhood residential. The zoning is RS1, which is single family residential. These are a couple of pictures. The house is set back from the road, and I zoomed in to give you an idea of what it looks like as you come in. The parking is to the left and right in front, and then it's set back fairly close to the water and quite a distance from the road. This is from the adjoining property to what I would consider on the left side. And then this is adjacent properties on both sides of the existing short-term rental. Gives you a feel for how it blends into the neighborhood. And you really cannot distinguish it from any of the other neighborhood facilities. We sent out 13 notices. We received 1 in favor, and I did not receive any in opposition. And the rationale for approval, impacts minimized. We do not anticipate that there are going to be any additional impacts since this short-term rental has been in existence for 3 years and has been functioning very well in that time period. We believe it is in consistency with the zoning ordinance for conditional use for the short-term rentals within the RS1 zoning district. We also believe it is compatible with the surrounding area, as I've already indicated. We anticipate that there will be no additional impacts on the natural environment. This is a deer area, and the deer still come up to the front of the house and around the back. Short-term rentals under community needs. Short-term rentals are really, really popular around the lake because they don't impact generally the neighborhood. Family can come spend a weekend or a week at the lake. They can enjoy it without being in a large commercial area, and that is really popular. And the intent is to not have an impact on the surrounding area. We anticipate that there will be no changes in the existing development pattern. Staff is recommending approval of the conditional use for a short-term rental at 1810 Shady Point Circle Drive with 2 conditions of approval. 1, that there is no exterior evidence of the short-term rental, and 2, that the property owner shall maintain the short-term rental in operation in a manner consistent with section 406 of the zoning ordinance, which are the requirements for the short-term rental, and that they have to get the required periodic reviews and fire marshal review. And with that, are there any questions that the Planning Commission might have?
No questions.
Well, good.
Thank you, Sherry. We're going to open it up for public comment. If you wish to speak on this case, please state your name and your single member district or address. All right. I'm going to close public comment. Does anyone wish to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve as presented by the staff. All in favor, say aye with a show of hands. And opposed?
5-0.
5-0. Right-of-way abandonment. City Council has final authority for approval of right-of-way abandonments. Alley right-of-way abandonment, 0 to 100 block of East Washington Drive, Garcia, request to approve the abandonment of approximately 7,200 square feet of alley right-of-way located north of East Washington Drive between South Chadburn Street and Orient Street.
Thank you, Chair Stribling, Commissioners. Jeff Fisher again, Principal Planner. This is our last case today. It's an alley right-of-way abandonment for East Washington Street. The owners own this property down here, which is 18 and 22 East Washington Street, and they want to abandon the remainder of this alley, which is 7,200 square feet or 0.165 acres. It's an L-shaped alley here. The intention was that the owners have business here, Texas Collision, and want to use this area for additional parking, and then also pave a driveway here that could get to some of their vehicles in the back. This is in District 3, Harry Thomas in the Fort Concho neighborhood. Future land use commercial zoning CGCH. 13 notices were mailed, 0 in favor and 0 in opposition. One of the conditions we want to bring forward before it gets to City Council is that all of the owners within the abutting owners agree to this, that if the applicant wants to get the whole alley. Oh, great. Okay. And they're here as well. And so I believe the owner's here to discuss, but I believe it's number 12 has no objections. They had mentioned we hadn't received anything to verify that, but obviously if nobody opposes it, then that would be at least one plus for them. So this is the area here, and there's already parking in this alley that would be abandoned. And so as you can see here, this would just allow them some more parking. Here's the adjacent business on Washington. This is the east-west portion looking from Orient Street. So this was part of the 1888 Mill Spa addition. This area up here was already closed, so this is the remainder. So this would just give them some more land for parking in a driveway. Planning staff circulated all relevant departments and all abutting property owners within 200 feet. Some of the companies, as well as the city engineering department, has a sewer line that goes through the east-west alley, and then some other lines and cables from different companies, including Atmos and Altice, formerly Sunlink. And so an unobstructed access easement would be one condition of approval. They wouldn't be able to put a building or gate or fence it off, but they would be able to use it as driveway or parking as long as they dedicate that unobstructed access easement. The applicants had replatted their lots in 2017, but they did not request the alley at the time, and now they need additional land. So this is where we're at. We don't anticipate any traffic patterns. From our review, the east-west alley is unpaved, it's just grass. And so they would eventually pave that if they obtain it. There's only one storefront, and that's the Gunter building to the west that would have access from there. And we haven't received anything back from them, but at least from visual inspection, their storefront faces Chadburn. And then they could get to the back from their own property. They wouldn't have to use the alley. There doesn't seem to be anybody else along that block that would have access to the alley at all, except for, like I said, the Gunter building. And I don't know if they would be using that. So we would like it, say, between now and council to get verification that they have no objections. As mentioned, the unobstructed access easement would accommodate all of those lines in there. We don't see any public benefit. Like I say, it's not being used right now. It's just grass. The east-west portion and the north-south portion is being used by the applicants. This would just allow them to legally use that piece. Staff recommends approval of the alley right-of-way abandonment for 7,200 square feet in block 14, subject to the 3 conditions of approval. I'll just go over these quickly. Number 1, that they have to plat that. So if they get the full abandonment, they would plat their lots with the alley into one large lot. So they wouldn't, anything that's not connected to them, they wouldn't have to replat. So it'd just be just similar to the case earlier today, pay the assessment formula and file a quitclaim deed to abandon the alley. This concludes staff's presentation. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and any questions or comments from the commission or others.
Can you go back to the aerial photo, please? Okay. So you have property on the west side of this alley abandonment that would be abandoning their section of the alley, as well as the properties to the north. Does the city receive written approval from all of those property owners that they're comfortable abandoning the alley behind their property?
That's what one of the conditions, that's what we're trying to get, I should say, before we go to city council next month. And so we're in process of that. We did circulate everyone abutting, and we just hadn't received any responses yet. Normally what we do is we pass this on to planning commission to recommend, and then city council. So we're trying to do now our new practice is to try to get those letters at least sometime between now and city council, but we have not received responses yet.
So what's the time frame for getting a response from those property owners before you finally say, if they're not going to respond, we will grant the request?
I mean, probably as soon as possible. I think, so normally what would happen is council could still approve the abandonment. The difference would be if we don't get anything before city council, then all of the abutting owners would have the right to half of the alley. So instead of the 20 feet, the applicant would only have the right to 10. And so that may be a problem for them too. So that the approval would go forward possibly, but until they actually fulfill the conditions and file the quitclaim, the alley is not officially abandoned. So there would be a vote to abandon it, subject to doing that. Either the applicant would apply for all of it, and then what happens normally is real estate sends letters out again after council approves and asks if those abutting owners want their half of the alley, and if they at that point they would say no, and then the applicant would be able to acquire all of it. We just would prefer to have that in advance, obviously, if we could.
Yeah, my concern is that the city gives those property owners adequate notice and time to respond to the request.
Yes.
So that if they still want their alley, it's not taken from them without their knowledge or
Correct.
objective.
So Jeff's right. The real estate division is the one we usually work with in these situations, and they would send out, Brandon, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they send out certified letters. And in that letter, it gives a 30-day, 60-day response time, depending on the situation. If they haven't responded within that time frame, then we assume they're not interested. I mean, there is some assumption there, but Brandon can probably part of that.
So I'm not sure what the ownership breakdown is on this, but normally to sell property, we would have to have like a bid or proposal process open to the public to do that. Is the statutory exception that allows us to forego that if we're selling to adjacent property owners. So if it's not all one owner, that's why we're requiring them to be in an agreement. And if they're not, and the applicant, like say on the west side property, if the applicant doesn't actually own any of those lots that are touching that, then we may not be able to go forward with it because we wouldn't be selling to an adjacent owner. So it may not go through. But yeah, we give an opportunity to all the owners to get their half, but they couldn't, I guess, I mean, if they wanted it, they get it, they can't say, we'll give our half in favor of someone else who's not adjacent to that property. Even if they, we still have to meet the statute. So we may have to bid it out and let the applicant get it that way.
Okay.
Quick question for Brendan, and the Garcias are here as well. So my understanding is they own 11A, but I don't think they own 14 at the lot 14, that one at the corner. So if nobody has any objections and we can confirm that in writing, would they be able, it was our understanding that they could acquire through, and they would have to plat it as a condition. They would have to take 11A and the alley and merge it into one piece. Could they, it sounds like they could do that, or?
If they're adjacent to the alley, if you're saying that they're not touching it, I don't think the property owner who is touching it can say, oh, we'll give you our half, because normally we would have to have that bid and proposal process. The only way we're getting around that is because it's an adjacent property owner. So if they're not adjacent, then no.
But again, I think the main thing that we want to emphasize here is we are asking if you see a public need in this alley and keeping this alley. Because if you don't, what we're going to do is recommend to council that it be abandoned. What we have said, like Jeff said, our practice has been, we do not take it to council until we have a good idea of every property owner and their desire.
Right.
So
And that was my point. As long as the other owners are in agreement with what's being done and there's been proper notice given, that's great. I just didn't want to ram this through and have someone come back and say, what happened to my alley?
Yeah.
Why don't I have alley anymore?
No, we've had some before where it's been, in the past where we get counsel and then somebody says, oh, well, we didn't like this or we didn't know this. So it's been our recent process. So before we go to council, we at least know, I would say, the good majority of everybody and know their thoughts. So we will continue to work with this. If we do not have that, we are unlikely to take it to council until we do. So
okay,
continue to work on that.
Sounds good. Anyone else have questions for the staff? All right, I'm going to open it up for public comment.
Mr. Garcia, if you want to speak, you're muted right now. So in the bottom left of your screen, there should be an unmute button when you hover your mouse over it.
There you go. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, to answer your question, the Gunther building, it's under contract. We're buying that building. And we own from if we buy the Gunther building, it's going to be from there all the way to the other end. So yes, that last lot is mine too. We just didn't plot it all together. You know what I mean?
Okay.
But it's
okay,
ours.
great.
Yes, sir.
Yes. And the alley, I maintenance that alley from day one I was here. I keep it clean. I cut it. And the other bandit building over there, the weeds go so high and so far that I have to cut it because the mosquitoes get real bad. So
okay.
I just need that alley so I can expand my business. And not only that, to keep this side of town kind of lively and making it look nice again.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You bet, sir.
All right. Anyone else wish to speak on this case?
No, but I'll motion to approve.
All right.
I'm
going to close public comment. I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to approve as presented. All in favor, say aye with a show of hands. And opposed?
Motion passes 5-0.
All right. Director's report. Anything from Mr. James?
Really just the broken record. We had hoped that this meeting to be the meeting that we came back in person. But given the spike recently in coronavirus cases, we kept this one virtual. Unless things change, it looks like we'll probably be virtual for December and who knows beyond that. I think now the goal is if cases start to go back down, then we'll look at having an in-person meeting. But for the foreseeable future, it looks like we'll still be virtual for a while.
Okay.
That's all.
Thank you, John. Okay. Future meeting agenda and announcements. The next regular meeting of the Planning Commission is tentatively scheduled to begin at 9 a.m. on Monday, December 14th, 2020. An adjournment. Do I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye with show of hands. Opposed?
5-0. Thank you all.
11:30. Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
It worked good, Hillary.